Uvracha to all of our listeners and viewers. This is Parshas Balak, and we should like to speak about the theme, and that indeed is the title of the shir of Ingratitude and Alienation. By way of introduction, we should ask the question, why is this section of the Torah, this parsha, called Balak? Balak was a Rasha, as we see at the very beginning of the parsha. The very, very beginning tells us the evil designs of Balak against the Jewish people. Vayar Balak ben Tzipor, Eis asher osa Yisrael le'moiri. He actually saw the victory, the triumph, insofar as the war over Moiri is concerned. Vayogar Moiv, he was indeed afraid, and he saw that the only possible solution to a potential attack that the Jewish people might plan against Moav was to bring a sorcerer, Bilaam, to curse the Jewish people, and through that they will be destroyed. In other words, he was interested very, very simply in destroying the Jewish people. There are different ways and means in which the enemies of the Jewish nation undertake to destroy us. He understood that Bilaam, he had a koyach b'dibur, he had a koyach of being able to bring about terrible curses and plagues. So people would simply destroy the Jewish people. And yet we see that this parsha is called, the title of this parsha is called, it's entitled Balak, who was a Rasha, an evil person. We don't have too many parshas that the appellation of the parsha, the name of the parsha, is based on a certain individual. We have parshas Noach, and we understand that Noach was a very central figure. It's the generation of the destruction of the flood. He was a ish tzaddik tomim hoya b'deirosav. So we see that as the central character and figure of the parsha. So therefore, it's called upon his name. It's called Parshas Noach. But Noach was also a ish tzaddik tomim hoya b'deirosav. At the end, all of humanity was destroyed by the flood. He was saved, and he was saved because he had virtues, he had values, and he was a ish tzaddik tamim hoya b'deirosav. He was a righteous person, despite the fact that everybody around him were violent people and committed idolatry, murder, incense, robberies, thefts, everybody. He was able to maintain a high level of morality and ethicism, despite the fact that everybody else around him was corrupt. Indeed, he's an outstanding, noble figure in times of difficulties. If somebody could stay ethical and moral when everyone around him is simply corrupt, so that's a great feat. We have Yisro, also a parsha was named after Yisro. Yisro was a central figure in the parsha. After all, he was the one that left the comfort and the great honor and dignity that was bestowed upon him in Midian. He left everything and he came to the Midbar. He converted. He gave very deep, important advice to Moshe Rabbeinu as far as setting up this structure of the judicial system. Indeed, like Chazal say, Yisro is al Shem Yetzel, Pal Shabbatayra. He merited a parsha should be called upon his name in the Torah. He indeed made a great contribution. We don't have necessarily the time, or it's not that relevant to see other contributions that he made, but he certainly contributed immensely to the existence of the Jewish people in the Midbar. Balak is a Rasha Merusha, an evil person full of evil designs. Why should he merit that the name of the Parsha should be called upon him? In addition, he's not the central character of the Parsha. The section that's called Balak, that's the title, basically revolves around somebody who was even a bigger Rasha, who was a greater evil person, and that, of course, is Bilam. Bilam is the central character of this Parsha. So if we were to ask a question, if the central character is Bilam, was there any possibility that the name, the nomenclature, the appellation of the Parsha would be called Bilam? After all, everything that's mentioned in the Torah is emes. And all of the prophecies that he prophesied, even though Chazal say many became curses, nevertheless, the prophecies that he prophesied all were true. For example, if we take a look at the Rambam in Hilchos Malachim, the halachas dealing with kingship and kingdom of the Jewish people, so the Rambam in the 11th chapter is quite well known, but it's worthwhile to repeat. So the Rambam says, "Amelech HaMashiach osed lavo, ulahach malchus beis David liyoshno," which was the Memshala Rishonah. King Messiah in the future will reveal himself, and he will restore the kingdom of Beis David, which happened to be the first kingdom in Jewish history. He'll also build the Beis Hamikdash, and he'll gather all the people that are in exile and bring them to the Holy Land, Eretz Israel. And now the Rambam, this is basically an aside, says, "V'kol mi she'einu mamin boy, oy mi she'einu mechake lebiyosoi, loy b'shar neviim b'lvadu koifer, ela b'toira u'v'Moshe Rabbeinu as well." If you don't believe that Melech Mashiach will come to redeem the world, the salvation will come through human agency, liyasid lavoy, in the future, and indeed, he will restore humanity to the highest level since the beginning of creation. Everybody will have knowledge of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Everybody will be elevated spiritually. So if we don't believe this, or we do not wait for Melech HaMashiach, so this is a denial, a kfira, insofar as the Torah is concerned and Moshe Rabbeinu is concerned. It's an actual denial of one of the most fundamental tenets of the Torah. This is what the Rambam says. And the Beis Yisrael always would say, Mechake Eloi, which we say on Imamun. Every day we say that on Imam, that's taken from the Rambam. The Rambam uses it in Hilchos Malachim, that term, Mechake. It's as if somebody is late for an important appointment with a doctor, with a lawyer, and he's late and he's worried that maybe he'll lose his appointment. So his heart beats in him as he waits to get there. Could be he's in a traffic jam. So he very impatiently, with great anxiety, looks forward to not missing the appointment, and that's called Mechake Eloi. So we're quite far from this. We should try to improve not only our belief in Melech Mashiach, but also Mechake Eloi, to wait for him. And afterwards, the Rambam tells us something fantastic. If the Rambam would not have said it, we would not have believed it. He quotes the psukim of Parshas Balak and Bilam's prophecy. Bilam says, "Ere'enu v'lo ato, Ashurenu v'loy korov, dorach koichav miyankiv v'kom shevet mi Yisrael. I see it, but not now. I behold it, but not soon. A star has gone forth from Yankiv. Dorach koichav miyankiv. And a staff will arise from the Jewish people. It'll crush the princes of Moav, uproot all the sons of Seis. Edom shall be possessed, and Seir shall become the possession of his enemies, and the Jewish people shall triumph. So the Rambam tells us, black on white, this is a reference, the Derech HaPshat, to Malchus Beis David and to Melech Mashiach. If we ask ourselves a question, how can the Rambam say if someone does not believe in Melech HaMashiach, he does not believe that there will be somebody from the tribe of Yehuda who will be from Melech, will be a Melech, will become a king, will be anointed to be a king. He will restore the Malchus of Beis David, so he's a kafir. He denies the tenet of the Torah HaKadoshah. Where do we see Mashiach mentioned in the Torah? So the Rambam tells us Bilam was the one that prophesied what the end of days will consist of. These are the words. This is what the Rambam says, and that's why it's one of the 13 principles, fundamental principles of the Jewish faith. And Reb Chaim Soloveitchik, no less, said that was the uniqueness of Bilam, because that was one aspect of prophecy that is not just alluded in the Torah, but metaphorically, that is the simple interpretation of the words. That's what Reb Chaim Brisker said. Bilam informed us, said the great Reb Chaim, of Yemos HaMashiach, of the days of the kingdom of Mashiach. He informed us that that is the direction that the world will take ultimately, and this will fulfill the purpose of creation. The ultimate purpose of creation is that everybody, that everyone should be aware and recognize the kingdom of the HaKadosh Baruch Hu. He's the owner of the world. He created the world. He created us. It will be ascertained with our senses and sensibilities, not in an abstract way, but it will be a very deep experience we shall experience in our hearts, in our soul, in all of our perceptions, senses, and sensibilities. And this will be the climax of all of the sorrows that we endured. He was the only prophet to inform us of the direction and the purpose of world history. And this is what the Rambam says, I see it, but not now. That refers to David. I behold it, but not soon, refers to Melech HaMashiach. A star has gone forth from Yankiv, refers to David. And a staff will arise from Israel, refers to Melech Mashiach. Edom will be possessed. Seir will become the possession of his enemies. That's the Jewish people. This refers to the Melech HaMashiach. And he explains that this is the mission of Melech HaMashiach, to continue the rule of Malchus Beis David, to bring the world to a state of ethical perfection and spiritual awareness and recognition in the senses and sensibilities of the world. Prophecy will return. says the Rambam, and will become commonplace. All of us, if we're there, will be eligible candidates to be prophets, will be overwhelmed and overpowered with the spirituality of Kudsha B'richu. And of course, this is one of the ironies of the Torah, that HaKadosh Baruch Hu actually appointed a non-Jew, somebody who was an anti-Semite, to relate this important prophecy. HaKadosh Baruch Hu selected Bilam to tell us that the seemingly never-ending battle against anti-Semites, and today the anti-Semites have threatened Jewish survival, just like in World War II. The Nazis and Churban Beis Hamikdash, all of these terrible tragedies and catastrophes threatened the very survival of the Jewish people. And the one that also belongs to this black list is Bilam. And one of the great ironies of all time, a paradox, that he's the one that told us about the very, very climax of the history of the world. The Jews will succeed, and the non-Jews will cease being anti-Semites, and they will ultimately accept the moral law of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and they will also experience the closeness of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And it was also Ovadia, who was an incredible person, a convert from Edom, who was the one that said, as the Rambam brings down at the end, so on the one hand, we have Bilam, an anti-Semite of great proportions, tremendous, nefarious powers, that he would be capable of destroying the Jewish people. The HaKadosh Baruch Hu did not permit it in a miraculous way. Being the one who was the messenger of the destiny of the world, and the one that told us that the Jewish people will succeed. And it's Bilam's message that inspires us to this very day. Our hope that Mashiach will come and bring about a salvation for the Jewish people and also for the entire world. One of the great ironies, paradoxes of the Torah HaKadoshah. So we see that all the prophecies are all true. He's the central character. Nevertheless, Bilam will not merit that the Parsha should be called in his name. And the reason is very obvious. Despite the fact that he was a messenger of solace, consolation, the ultimate end will be in the favor of the Jewish people. Nevertheless, Bilam was a nefarious enemy of the Jewish people, as was Balak. Nevertheless, Bilam was worse. He might be the central character of the Parsha. However, he does not merit that the Parsha should be called on his name. And the reason is very simple. Baron Cutler explained to us an esoteric medrash, which we did not understand without Baron Cutler. The Chazal say, if somebody rebukes another person educationally, he gives them instruction, tells them how to succeed in life. He's on the wrong path, and it's worthwhile for him to have a success in this world and to reach the world to come. It's important for him to change his entire lifestyle. So at the end, the one that rebuked him will find favor in this individual's eyes. The individual will be very gratified that he gave him Musa, Teichacha, rebuke, a reproach. More than Mimachlik Loshan, that somebody praises the other person, compliments him, extols him and exalts him, and says he's a great, noble person. So who does this refer to? So the Chazal say, Mashiach Adam Achrecheni Moshe refers to Moshe Rabbeinu, that Moshe Rabbeinu said an entire sefer of the Chamisha Chumshe Torah, one of the 5 books of the Torah, Tvarim, Parsha after Parsha, section after section, a complete book of the 5 holy books of the Torah. They were all musarim, moral, ethical rebuke, threats that Jewish people don't go in the proper way, they'll lose everything. Every type of reproach, every type of rebuke, from every single approach possible, Moshe Rabbeinu undertook in Sefer Dvarim, and he was Motzach Chen V'Seichel Tov B'nei Klal Yisrael. He died afterwards. They cried 30 days, grieved for Moshe Rabbeinu. Bilam Hechlikom B'Nevuasai. Bilam praised the Jewish people. Mateva Lechayankim Mishkanesecha Yisrael. Aryeh Chalovi Yekimenu. Praise, metaphors, most beautiful metaphors and symbolism possible emanated from Bilam. We say it every day. You know, how can we tell you everything? Mountains, streams, the Jewish people are like, have the enthusiasm of a lion that wakes up early in the morning. Oh, praise, descriptive, metaphorical of the Jewish people. And you know what happened, say the Chazal? The Baron Kotler, Zeichat Tzaddik V'Kavshvel, found this medrash, Govol Libam, they became arrogant, vainglorious, proud of their great achievements. V'noflu b'shitim, and that is why they succumbed. In shitim, to avodah zarah, idolatry, and immorality. Harayas, and that's so many hundreds of thousands of people that died because of it. And of course, the question naturally arises, and the Chazal asked the question in the Yalkut at the end of Parshas Emor. So it says, Yisrael nigulu b'Mitzrayim al yedei shlohoya be'em paratz erva. Teida l'cho shekeinu achasoyis ha'persim ha'kosov. Mikol shekein kol zman ha'yoseh b'midbar sheba bilam v'heflik loshan v'govo libom u'beglal zeh lo yomdu neged ha'yetzel. 210 years, the Jewish people were in Mitzrayim. Millions of Jews, many generations. And Mitzrayim, the Chazal called Erbas Ha'aretz. The atmosphere of Mitzrayim lends itself, motivates one to commit immorality, crimes. In the section dealing with Arayas. Tzadikim nisgovim, greater than we are. Trials, tribulations all around, an atmosphere that's saturated with immorality in the Jewish people, with tremendous resistance. Resisted all those years. There was one case, and they were in the Midbar. This is the 40th year already. No problems whatsoever in morality. And all of a sudden, we see that Bal Pa'or, Monolitzlan, hundreds of thousands of people committed to morality, and some of them were the most outstanding leaders of the Jewish people. Cannot understand it. So the Baron Kotler, Chazal told us the answer. This was a nefarious plan of Bilam. And the Baron Kotler, after he brings down the Medrash, says, and we have to remember the Medrash says, Gova Libam. He became proud, vainglory, arrogant. And that's why they succumbed in Shittim to the worst immoral behavior. So Baron Kotler said, that's not a chiddush. It's not abnormal. It's not an anomaly. This is the nature of things. Somebody who is proud, he's arrogant in his own eyes. He has an uplifted spirit. He weaves a halo of greatness around himself. He idolizes himself. He thinks of himself as one of the great, outstanding people in the world, to the extent that the result will automatically be he can see nobody else but himself. He sees nobody. Self-idolization. Said the Baron Kotler, then it's impossible almost lavar al ritzoynoi to restrain and resist his base urges and drives. He can't, so he'll commit the worst of avos. What brought him to that? Self-idolization. Idolized himself. He's great. Became proud. Became arrogant. Impudent. And at the end, what will happen when he's confronted with a difficult situation that biological drives force him to do? So what will happen? It will be confronted now. He won't be able to resist because he has self-entitlement. He's an outstanding person. He deserves it. And the Chazal say, Kol Adam sheyesh legasas haruach. Anybody that has impudence, he's a balgeya, a balgaiva, l'soif nichshal be'eshes ish. What will be the end? It will be over an issue of immorality with a married woman. Unbelievable. What should be the response to Bilam's outstanding praise? If you have humility, and you don't need that much. If you're a modest person, so you realize you're not on that level, and you still have a way to go. There's other people that reach higher standards than you. You have not come to the apex. You have not come to the summit of the mountain. So therefore, what should have been the response and what should be our response? To go on an ego trip? We should realize that we have not yet come to the highest level possible. Even if we accept and believe the praise, but we should realize if we have modesty that we have a long way to go. And therefore there will be no aveirus, no transgressions that will come out of this. When they heard, they had such modesty and tznius that they made sure that their tents, the doors and the windows were not set up in a sense that you could see what's going on by the neighbor. In other words, they had such a sense of modesty that they went out of their way to make sure that there was no parallelism between their doors and windows and their neighbors' doors and windows, because they were really not interested in what was going on by somebody else. It was a gather of tznius, of modesty, not curious what's happening by somebody else. They were not interested in it. They were only interested in serving HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Unbelievable. Matavu Alecha Yankiv. Mishkan Yisrael. How goodly are the tents of Yankiv and the dwellings of Israel. Their modesty, but since they did not think that they were not on that level, so therefore they were not alert, they did not watch themselves, and therefore they unfortunately reached the lowest level possible, bestial immorality. And that is why it is so important not to leave the midah of a noveh, because without a noveh, without modesty, people will be nichshal. Today, modern psychologists call it self-entitlement. So that is why this parsha could never be called Bilam. On the one hand, as we mentioned, he's the central character, he's important so far as delineating for us the trajectory of our destiny and the world destiny. On the other hand, he was a diabolical figure belonging to the category of Hitler, Stalin, Hamas. But Bullock was the one that hired him. So we have a question, why is it still called Al Shem Bullock? So we have a very interesting phenomenon, which we'd like to speak about, not too long. We have an interesting phenomenon. This is not a historical account. The Torah is not history. This specific episode of the Torah, where Bullock hired Bilam services for big money, resulted in two mitzvahs. A mitzvah l'shoachas, a temporary mitzvah, and a mitzvah l'dairas for eternity. The first mitzvah was, you see in the subsequent parshas, revenge is supposed to be taken against Midian. After all, Bilam was from Midian, and he was the one that enticed the nice Midian, so there was nice Moav, right, to do acts of immorality. So the mitzvah of Nikomeh, of revenge, was exacted against Midian and Bilam. Nikom Nikmas. Bnei Yisrael me'es ha-Midyanim, for the Midianites, and the Chazal explained v'loy min ha-Moyavim. The Moyavim were the ones. Melech Moav, king of Moav, was the one who hired the services of Bilam, so he was excluded from this mitzvah of conducting a war of revenge for what was done to the Jewish people. The Goyrem, the cause, was Melech Moav, he was exempt. Who was included? The Midianim. So Chazal wondered, why were they let off? Why were they exonerated? So there's two answers in Chazal. One, because of Rus HaMoaviyah, the famous Rus. She comes from Moav, and Namo also comes from Ammon. So therefore, So far as we're concerned, our focus of attention is that Rus comes from Moab. Now the reason is because the pasuk says Vayagar Moab. Moab was afraid. So Midian was nichnas b'riv lo lahem. What does Midian have to worry about? The Jewish people were far from Midian. They posed absolutely no threat, no existential threat whatsoever. So what are you getting involved for? Riv lo lahem is not your business. So therefore you will be the object of a war of revenge. Moab had a type of excuse. They were afraid. Okay, that's what Chazal said. However, when it comes to another mitzvah, which is the Dairais, so the reverse is true. Midian was excluded and Moab was included. And the pasuk says very clearly in Parshas Kiseitze, L'yovai Amoini u'moyovi b'kal Hashem Gam dor asiri lo yovoi lohem b'kal Hashem ad elo. Even if somebody from Moab or Ammon were to convert, the male population, they converted, they cannot marry a Bas Yisrael. They cannot marry a Jewish woman. They have to marry a Mamzeres, a Nesino, a Yeres. They cannot marry a Jewish woman. Why not? And they're excluded forever. Today too, this happened 4,000 years ago, 3,600 years ago, I don't know exactly, thousands of years ago, many millennia ago. Till this day, we don't know who Moab is, we don't know who Ammon is, but if we would know, they would be excluded even after conversion from marrying a Jewish woman. Why? Ammon, says the Ramban, had this bad midah of not offering simple food, even for money, says the Ramban. Water, lechem, for great people that just came out of Mitzrayim. Says the Ramban, Tiro, they were broken, crushed in spirit, broken in body after so many years of servitude, wandering. Where's your menschlichkeit, your minimum humanity? Offer them hospitality. And insofar as Moab is concerned, Al Dvar Asher Lo Kidmu Eschem Balechem B'Mayim, the devil says in Mitzrayim, Asher Sochar Olecho Es Bilam B'Moab, Me'aram Na'arayim Lekalelko, Lo Yobo Hashem L'Shmoyel B'Elohim. And the reason why Moab is excluded and they will not be able ever to marry a Jewish woman, even if they convert, is very, very simple, because they hired Bilam to curse the Jewish people. But the Lord your God did not want to listen to Bilam. If he would have, God forbid. So the Lord your God transformed the curse into a blessing for you, because HaKadosh Baruch Hu loves you. So the question naturally arises, why don't we say that the reason that the Torah gives us is not a legitimate reason? Because the reason they hired Bilam is because they were afraid of the Jewish people. And just like the tam, the reason of machmas yiro, of fear, excluded Moab from the revenge that was exacted, by the Jewish people for the egregious episode of Baal Pa'ah. They were excluded. They were not the object of this revenge, but because they entered into the negotiations with Bilam because they were afraid. That was a valid excuse. So why is it not a valid excuse insofar as exempting them from the disqualification of marrying a Jewish woman should they convert? That's the question. So basically the answer is, as the Ramban tells us beautifully, what is the common denominator between these two reasons? Ammon, says the Ramban, offer no hospitality. Moav hired Bilam to destroy the Jewish people. Ingratitude. Because the Ramban tells us something remarkable, one of the great insights into the Torah HaKadoshah. Only the Ramban was able, with his depth, to give us an understanding of what is going on here. So he said that there was a covenant that was made between Avram Avinu and Lot, his nephew. It was a bris achva, a covenant of brotherhood, where each person is mandated to have loyalty, gratitude, and moisa nefesh, and give up his life as necessary for the other. And the Ramban says, "V'Avram ohav es Lot kinafshay." Avram loved Lot like his own soul. And everything, here's the Ramban, and everything that Ammon and Moav had, even their country, was due to the schus of Avram Avinu. And it was Avram Avinu who showed the ultimate loyalty, says the Ramban, the ultimate loyalty. When Lot was captured, so he took 318 people against thousands and thousands of soldiers, 4 kingdoms, and he risked his life to save Lot. So we see here, says the Ramban, the unqualified, unconditional love that Avram had for Lot. Why did he do it? Why did he risk his life? Because once upon a time, Lot did him a favor. What's the favor? It was a small favor. When he was in Mitzrayim, and Avram Avinu decided to say in Egypt, right, that his wife, Sarah, a very, very beautiful woman, was his sister, Achoisi. So, of course, he knew the truth. And he wanted very, very much to inform. And insofar as, I would say, universally speaking, it's a universal that an informer is the lowest level that somebody could sink to. People can sink to really low levels, but if you're an informer, that's the worst. And he really wanted to inform on Avram Avinu. And nevertheless, he restrained himself. And therefore, Avram Avinu was not killed. Could have been killed. So because of this, Avram Avinu felt that the covenant of brotherhood and fellowship that existed between them mandated that he risk his life. We would say that this is not even a favor. The most is a small favor, but that was Avram Avinu. Why did he do it? Because of loyalty, dedication. And why was he loyal? To the extent of being heroic and courageous? Because of gratitude. Small favor. It's not something that we would consider a favor. We would say it's very, very natural for a person not to do such an evil act. Avram Avinu considered it a favor. So therefore, Avram Avinu showed his gratitude. And his gratitude was manifest in an unbelievable, heroic, and courageous act of redeeming Lot that was captured and held hostage. So we see over here a very interesting phenomenon. That Avraham Avinu was the first that acted courageously due to gratitude. We ask ourselves the question, when Ruth, she comes from Moav, Ruth, Moavio, told Naomi, when Naomi tried to encourage her to leave, because if she clings to Naomi, she'll have no future whatsoever. She says, Al tifdu bi, do not entreat me to leave you. So we see in her heart, she had deep loyalty to Naomi. She realized that she has no future to go with Naomi. Naomi was in poverty. She herself had no future, but she was grateful. She had a gratitude to Naomi. Like Reb Chaim Shulevitz explained, because Naomi was like her Rebbe. It was like her instructor, her mentor. She had a tremendous gratitude. And because of that gratitude, she was very loyal. And because of loyalty and gratitude, she acted courageously and did not worry about herself. And she accompanied Naomi and hearkened to all of her instructions, even when he told her something to the effect that she should go to the threshing floor of Boaz, uncover his feet. And he was sleeping, and she accepted everything. This is gratitude. Gratitude makes people courageous, heroic. And the Jewish people are also grateful people. And they do everything they can to try to reform the world and transform humanity. And ultimately, like we mentioned a moment ago, when Melech Mashiach will come, so all human beings will be transformed, and evil, wars, famine will be wiped out. And it's a phenomenon, absolutely phenomenal to know that the last 3,600 years that the world existed, only 248 years were void of war, the face of the earth. Less than 10% of the time, the last 3,600 years, where there are no wars being conducted in the world. This was Avraham Avinu. Says the Ramban, and the children of Lot that owed their lives to Avraham Avinu and the Jewish people and the generations that followed Avraham. They got the possession of the land through that bris, and the Jewish people helped them establish their nationhood and their country. So they were mishalem ra tachas toiv. They were ingrates. They should have shown their gratitude. And what did they do instead? Ingrates. And the Torah enumerates their ingratitude. One, by Ammon, failed to provide hospitality, and by Moav, much more egregious, evil, hired Bilam for the total destruction of the Jewish people. He was an anti-Semite that would only rest in pieces if he could destroy the Jewish people. Unbelievable. So this ingratitude brought about an alienation. They cannot marry a Jewish woman. They're ingrates. To marry a Jewish woman, like the Chazal say, you have to have an awareness of Akara Satayfa. So now, to answer the question, we'll just bring in a story of the Rosh Yeshiva of Hebron Chatzkel Sarna. Chatzkel Sarna, at 12 o'clock at nighttime, would speak with everybody who wanted to speak with him. He was free, he was lucid, and once an individual came to speak to him about 1 o'clock in the morning, and they spoke about his problems, and it was 3 o'clock when they finished, and he asked Rosh Hashiva, where are you going to speak? So he said, I made myself an arrangement in the dormitory. So he says, why? Your brother lives across the street in Rechava Yeshiva. He says, what? I'm going to knock on the door of my brother at 3 o'clock in the morning? Oh, he'll be upset with me. So Chatzkel Sarni lost himself. He said, what? He'll be upset with you? You have no Hakara Satayva. Hakara Satayva loosely is translated to mean gratitude. But Chatzkel said, no. Gratitude has two stages. First, you need an awareness, a perception, an investigation, an exploration of what a person did for you. That's why it's called Hakara Satoiva. Hakara literally means to see, to recognize, to be aware. You have no Hakara Satoiva. Because if you would realize to the great extent that your brother and the great efforts that your brother went to on your behalf from the time you were a child, so you would have no resistance whatsoever, no restraint. You would go knock on the door realizing if you knock on the door at 3 o'clock in the morning, you say you have nowhere to sleep, he'll be happy to give you whatever availabilities there is. He'll give you his own bed. You have no Hakara Satayva. After there's a recognition, an awareness, so it's expected that you should feel indebted and reciprocate. Like the Babas used to say, if you really feel grateful to somebody and you don't express it, so it's like buying a gift wrapping it and not giving it. But that's only a second stage. And that's appropriate to what we're speaking about. How is it that Moav came to fear the Jewish people? Vayogar Moav, those are the first two words of the Parsha. They were afraid of the Jewish people, that the Jewish people would attack them. Attacked them? In the course of hundreds of years, they only did them favors. The Jewish people only did favors to everybody. In our time, who were the ones that worried that the Negroes, the African Americans, should have equal rights to Jewish people? Who was the head of every single liberal type of movement to improve the destiny of destitute people, the Jewish people? We have it today too. And we're the recipients of Ratachas Toiv. Instead of expressing gratitude, we have ingratitude. And ingratitude brings about alienation and estrangement and bad consequences. The Taina on Moav is, Vayogar Moav, how did you come to be afraid of Israel? They're your best friends. You're worried they're going to attack? They'll be backstabbers? There was a bris achva. And the Ramban says, never inquire about their welfare ever again. Because if you have a covenant that's broken by one side, so the covenant becomes null and void. Don't inquire about their welfare. And if you do your oiver, it's a transgression. Low-life people, ingrates. And this will result. But insofar as the Nekama is concerned, the revenge is concerned, so that depends on how their mindset is presently. And since their mindset presently is that they are afraid, so we can't exact revenge against them. But if we're dealing with a psula, disqualification, to marry a Jewish woman, which revolves around lack of akaras hatoiva, so they have lack of akaras hatoiva. Why did you come to become afraid? No reason for it. These are your best friends. These are your brothers. There's a brotherhood, a fellowship. And this is the answer. On another occasion, we hope to speak about what our obligation of a karas hatoiva is to our fellow man. It's Hashem.